Welcome to the show, Hibernation Sports Talk up and rolling. I'm Sean Stiers along with you here this evening. Got a special guest, first-time guest on the show today, Tony Simeone. He's the radio voice of both Notre Dame football and Notre Dame men's basketball. We're going to talk to him, kind of relive some of the run, his first season calling Notre Dame football games, the run to the college football playoff and the national championship game this season. And then when Tony is done, Mr. Vince DeDario will pop in and we'll have a little rapid fire going on today. So that's what we've got going on today's show. That's right. Tony and Tommy. Tommy's got a nice pizza, it looks like there, as his photo in the chat. So Tony's going to join me. It's coming up right now, and I will let you decide, because everyone always asks, is this live? Is it recorded? What exactly is it? Well, you'll find out. Well, maybe you'll find out. I'll let you decide. As promised, Tony Simeone is with us. He, of course, is the radio voice of Notre Dame football as well as men's basketball. How many years is this for men's basketball now for you, Tony? 5, 6, something like that?
Time flies. All you got to do is just go back to the Jack Nolan retirement date, which we all remember.
Which is, yeah.
So this will be my 5th season. So I've done 4 years. Okay. The final 2 of the Mike Bray era and the first 2 of the Coach Shrewsbury era. So it is actually hard to believe that starting this year, when they throw that ball in the air for the first game, I'll have done more Micah Shrewsbury era basketball than Mike Bray, which blows me away. But it's been an awesome experience, no doubt.
Absolutely. And Tony does a great job doing both of those calls on the Notre Dame radio network. And of course, he is also the host of the Wake Up the Echoes podcast. And you get to talk to a little bit of everybody over there at Notre Dame when that thing is up and rolling, don't you?
Yeah, that's a great Monday chat I get to have with everybody. I know it comes out on Tuesdays, but it's pretty much Monday morning every week for me. It's great to kind of check in with Coach Freeman, Coach Shrewsbury, Coach Ivy, who I know you're familiar with, of course. And then, right. The athletic director, Pete Bavacqua, was kind of our 4th regular guest, if that makes sense. We did 5 shows with him. And I found those to be incredibly enlightening as well, especially as I know you're aware with all the stuff coming down from the House settlement now.
Yeah.
He was talking about that months before and kind of what that would look like for Notre Dame. So I find those, and I hope our listeners do as well, pretty informative to kind of, there's so many moving parts now in college athletics. I can't keep track of it all. And
I know.
I'm paid to do so as a year. So those that are not paid to do so, that are just fans tuning in, I hope that we were able to get some of that out so people could digest it better and they were not caught off guard by this. But yeah, we have a great time covering that. And as you know, Notre Dame has so much to offer as an athletics department beyond just football and basketball, men's basketball, which I'm heavily involved with. But it's great to sit down. We had some fencers on this year, lacrosse players who've had a great run over the last few seasons. So it's just great to kind of take a pulse of how things are going across the entire department.
Yeah, I'm sure, I'm just glad that they finally got this House settlement figured out. I mean, implementing it for the schools is going to be one thing, but I'm just glad that because everything was just kind of on hold and it was just massive speculation for everybody. People kept getting asked, what kind of plans do you have? Well, we have to wait until it's actually done before we can really, we have contingencies, but now it's finally in place and hopefully that helps everybody a little bit going forward.
Yeah, I think it's, like you said, it's good that something has now been rolled out to an extent and everyone can now start abiding by a common set of rules. It does feel like we've been in this perpetual state really since I got to Notre Dame back in 2016. I started hearing about NIL pretty soon thereafter. And we're now coming up on a decade since then where it just feels like, and we're starting to wrap our heads around what NIL really means, but now there's this House part. It just feels like every year there's always something new. We're trying to understand. It obviously looks different than it was when I was growing up, when you were growing up. But I am hoping, like you said, like this is the piece that can maybe then we can look back 5 years from now and say, okay, we've gotten past this period of constant, just I call it speculation, right? And everyone's trying to do their best. And I give Notre Dame a ton of credit. I mean, they've been at the forefront of a lot of the discussions, a lot of the decision making, and they've been supremely. And again, I don't work full time with the department the way I used to, but they have been supremely prepared for all of this, whether it was NIL decisions or this settlement that came down. They're reacting because, they have to, because things don't always go as planned, but they've been very proactive in a way to prepare the proper reaction. So it's right. I'm hopeful that this is kind of that, when we look back, it's kind of the end of that period of time. And this will get us kind of to a more uniform system in college athletics, which I think would be good for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you said you're going into year 5 for men's basketball. This will be year 2 for football. So, I mean, of course, you couldn't have handpicked a better season to start off as your first doing Notre Dame football on the radio. I'm curious, how did you find out that was going to be your gig? Go back and how did you get the news on that?
Yeah. I mean, it was obviously a thrill. I'm trying to remember the timeline exactly, but just for background, maybe those that aren't familiar, I got to do a football game during the pandemic in 2020. This is how,
I remember that. Yeah.
And you're in broadcasting and you know how you can work your tail off and sometimes the way you get your breaks is just, it's random.
Pure luck, right?
But if you know anything about golf, I promise you, I am not necessarily.
I'm not saying yours was luck.
No. I say this all the time. I am not necessarily the most capable or most outstanding broadcaster. I'm just in the right place at the right time, and I'm good enough, is what I like to say. You got to be good enough, and then if you're in the right place at the right time, it works out. But
that's true.
In 2020, this is how much, like you said, luck is on your side. Fox needed to get out of their U.S. Open golf package they'd paid a ton of money for. They were halfway through it, and they sold it to NBC because the majors got moved back that year due to COVID. So trying to make a long story short, NBC now was originally not on the hook to produce the US Open and British Open in the same year, but now they were, because they were buying that contract back, the back half of it from Fox. So that required Mike Tirico, who was still doing the TV games, to go work golf in the, at kind of the height of the pandemic, which meant that Paul Burmeister, who did the football games on the radio before me for 6 years, who was an NBC guy, had to slide over and do TV in 2020. And then that opened up an opportunity for me in 2020. And especially because there was, there were a lot of people at Fighting Irish Media and Notre Dame Gold Partners were nice enough to give me the opportunity, but also there was the element that they couldn't even really entertain flying someone in or driving someone from even Chicago or Indy, because that was at a time where it was, there were heightened sensitivities to bringing outsiders onto campus. And
had to be in the bubble. Right.
Yeah, exactly right. And so I benefited from that. They knew I'd done, as I was talking to you, I'd filled in for Bob Nagel on the women's basketball. I'd done some broadcasting with NBC on the hockey side of Peacock. So that gave me an opportunity, and I got to do the game. It was the South Florida game. It was an amazing experience, despite it being in a very, empty stadium. And then that was at least a way for me to familiarize myself with the people and decision makers that when Paul had this opportunity to move on to do, he now basically does a package with NBC in the Big Ten and couldn't do the football games for Notre Dame anymore. That opened up kind of the opportunity for me. And I'd done a game last year as well at Clemson when Paul couldn't make it for a Peacock broadcast, which is another opportunity to kind of just, put my name out there.
Sure.
But that's what led to that. And so when the opportunity came up and the call came, it's a no-brainer, right? I mean, it's Notre Dame football, and only so many people have been lucky enough to get to call those games. So you try to play it cool on the phone, I think, but the answer is yes before they ask the question. Let me see. Let's play. Let's try to negotiate. Yeah, I'll have to think about it. Let me get back to you.
Right.
It's and it, like you said, lived up to the hype. What an amazing season. I'm like any fan. After that second game, you're kind of thinking, oh boy, what's going on here? But then it turned out to be, it was almost it. As we get further away from it, it's great they lost. It's just they responded so well. They learned so much from it. And who knows how the season would have gone had they not lost, but we know how it went kind of because they lost. And it was so fun to be a small part of it and get to call those games.
I know the things that I was thinking after that game and just kind of where I thought the season might go at that point. I mean, is that kind of, again, it's out of our control. It's, any broadcaster, media member, whatever, it's obviously completely out of our control in terms of what's going to happen out there on the field or the court. You just do your best job, to relay what's going on. But are you thinking, man, what's going to happen with this season when that?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're trying to, it's so hard to, because how it went after. But if you just think back to that time, it was shocking. Just because there's the extra layer of how well they played the week before at Texas A&M, and I remember thinking going into the season, like if you win this game, you can't count your chickens before they hatch, but you've got a great opportunity to kind of walk to the playoff, and then to stub your toe on that game. It just felt like there's tons of ways that, so many good teams. We didn't know Florida State was going to have the, struggles they have, but you could lose to Florida State. There could be USC, whatever it might be. You didn't see that one coming. And so it just made it made me and any fan, I think, just question everything. And I think it helped the team that you can't take anything for granted. So it was just like they went to Purdue the next week. I remember I was thinking I think people were picking against them in some cases. And it was just like, they won handily, but you go into the game like, we don't know what team's going to show up. And so I think that actually helped them because they knew they couldn't count on just showing up. They had to prepare the right way and have a certain attitude. And Marcus Freeman's been super open about, that whole process. But yeah, in that moment, when you're at the stadium, you kind of just, you can't really believe it. But, to their credit, they found a way. But yeah, in that moment, you're thinking, gosh, how's this season going to go for my first year broadcasting? Am I going to have to be the guy relaying some more disappointing moments? I hope not.
Am I going to be remembered as the guy who came in and everything fell apart?
Paul's going to be flying back in for the USC game before we know it. Yeah. So, yeah, you're like any fan in that moment. I think the one thing actually that's nice, and I don't know if you feel this when you do the women's games, is I think by nature of my job, I know I'm supposed to get excited when they win and, be a little bit downtrodden when they lose, but I feel that it actually helps me stay centered and not become as I go like my variance is higher than the average fan on the roller coaster. I don't think I was ever so crazy excited when they won or ever so disappointed the one time they lost when they had a struggle, because you have a job to kind of do and you can't let the way you would feel as a fan maybe cloud the way you call the game, is kind of the way I think of it. So it's been fun to, have some time away from the season, because go back and watch the Peacock documentary, think about some of the games, they're incredible. And I think in those moments, you're just trying to call the game that you don't get a chance to fully appreciate them. So that's one of the things I've liked about getting some time away from the season, is that I look back on it more now. It's like, wow, that was just such a fun run.
Well, I mean, and that's the other aspect of it. It was the longest season in Notre Dame football history, longest season in college football history, so like 16 games, and then you're overlapping that with juggling, your basketball duties as well. I'm sure that you've needed a little extra time to kind of decompress when it was all said and done.
But as you know, like they're paying me to talk about sports, so like whatever.
No, that's exactly right. It's fun no matter what.
Yeah, so. I never want to come across as like, oh, what a tough schedule. But that said, we did have a 6-month-old at the time. My wife's having to take care of him for longer than on her own as anticipated. So what do you mean it's another trip to another bowl game? I thought the postseason it used to be one
for another week.
Yeah, now there's 4, which is funny. And then with just the way it all went at the end, I think it was the Orange Bowl. Yeah, they won the Orange Bowl. We got back to the hotel like midnight. I think I had like a 6 a.m. flight to get to Durham for the men's basketball game against Duke, which was a day later. And I'm just thinking, I was exhausted. Don't get me wrong. Took a nap, like felt terrible getting in. But I 2 days later got home, was like, I just got to call the Orange Bowl, in which they came back and won to go to the national championship, and then call the men's basketball game at Duke. I didn't like seeing what happened, but Cooper Flagg did have, I think, a career high, like 42 points.
That's right.
And there'll be a time when, this 6-month-old I have at home, I can tell him, hey, like Cooper Flagg might be one of the best players in the NBA by then. I got to see him, put on a great show. I got to be in Cameron Indoor Stadium, which is an amazing venue, and at the Orange Bowl. Like, how good do I have it? So it was an awesome time to just be involved with those programs.
Yeah, I mean, like you put it that way. Like what aside from Notre Dame Stadium, what maybe was your favorite venue to call a football game from last season?
Yeah, A&M probably is the first one that comes to mind. It did live up to the hype, and that game was so close. It was tied, I think, at the two-minute timeout. I think Jeremiah Love scored the touchdown right after the 2-minute timeout. So it was tied game back and forth. They had that drive. There was a point in time where I really thought, like if A&M picks up a first down here, they might win the game. I think they got off the field. I can't remember how it all went down, but it was, that place was rocking. And it was great to see that. As far as the bowl games go, Notre Dame Stadium, as you alluded to, like that Indiana game was unbelievable. So
right.
That's the first one that came to mind. I will say, being at the Coliseum, I'd never been there for a game. And my parents are both USC grads.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes gets me into hot water around here. Yeah. But being there, the view we have in the booth, you kind of have an amazing view of the Hollywood sign, and you can kind of see glimpses of Los Angeles beyond it. I didn't realize how great the view is up there. That one, as I'm just thinking through all the places, like it just kind of sticks with me as a really unique place. Yankee Stadium was surreal. But I got to say, hardest venue, you can appreciate this, hardest venue to call a football game ever. You're at home plate, so they're running to and from you.
Right.
And then it was just, I think half the touch, when they're going the other way, when they're in center field, I was just looking at the video board because you just had no idea. So it was.
Well, I was going to say, I covered the BCS championship game at the Orange Bowl, when they played Alabama, and then also didn't broadcast there, but also covered the Pinstripe Bowl the next year. So, and in both cases, they've got most of the media set off just what you're talking about. You're more in the end zone as opposed to, any kind of sideline view. So that's what was your Orange Bowl perspective at least a little bit better than that? Or
it's better than Yankee Stadium, but it's definitely, I'll say suboptimal. It's not the best vantage point. The best one we had was the Meadowlands. We were like right on the 50-yard line, looking straight down on the field. That was terrific.
Yeah.
Orange Bowl, definitely there was you had to be a little creative with kind of how you're calling things. And again, it was easier when they're coming to you. When they were going away, it was just really tough to tell. You're also a little bit lower, and there's kind of like an overhang. You're in a spot where, if you can put you up 10 feet or left 10 yards, it'd probably be a lot better, but that's where you are. So, but by the game started, you just forget about all that. It's amazing how these things, like as broadcasters, I had a guy send me like a picture, like, good luck with your angle. And I got there, I'm like, oh man, this will be an adventure. And the game starts and just, totally fine. Like it's right. You just think about the game.
You do what you got to do at that point. That's exactly right. That's right. Tell me this, Sugar Bowl, Georgia, I don't want to call it we can't technically call it a fake punt, but obviously the punt team is on the field, fourth quarter. Punt team runs off, offense runs back on. What's going through your head when you see this in that instant?
Yeah, I've watched it back on either the social video they put out or the Here Come the Irish on Peacock, and does a good job. It includes our calls in there with me and Ryan Harris, who does a great job with our color commentary.
Yep.
But I remember, at this point, really Marty Biaggi and Brian Mason. I want to give Brian Mason credit too when he was here. But the special teams, in my opinion, have been so good since Marcus Freeman got here. And I love a wrinkle in special teams. They had so many cool fakes this year. So we're at the point in the season where just anytime they're punting, I'm kind of like, and it's a close game, I'm kind of going to Ryan, be like, think about fake here. And Ryan says, and I don't think there's anything wrong with him in the end technically being incorrect, because he is right. You're up 10, you're at your own 19. He's like, let's be clear, you're punting here. And I think everyone would agree, like that's what you do. But they had such a unique call, and they came out, and I did point out, and I remember listening to it, and I was happy with myself as a broadcaster, because I noticed they came out in a punt formation, but it was not a normal look. It was exotic in its nature. There were like three guys split a certain way, but it was the punt team. And so I tried to point that out, but I was like, this doesn't look right. And again, I'm just like, they're not going to fake it. I think they're at their own 19. And like, they're not going to fake it from here. This is truly like going to be one of the craziest. That would be insane. Yeah. And then Ryan was the first to notice when I said, now they motion. And I thought they were motioning kind of like swinging gate. They were going to motion everyone to like the left side of the field There's
Right.
that famous fake that didn't work for the Colts, I think, where that's just the center. Maybe he's going to direct snap it, and it's one-on-one. Someone tries to make a play. Like maybe they're going to get somehow Jeremiah Love, the snap in space, and he's just going to run. I don't know. But then as I saw them motioning, Ryan noticed the offense on the sideline. He's like, the offense is coming on the field. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's this? And credit to them and the staff for knowing what the rule was, that you couldn't be over the ball, and all the, there's a lot of study that goes into pulling that off and not breaking the rule. Absolutely. But what I haven't asked Marcus Freeman about, and I don't know if I'll ever get to now, because I'm sure that everything we'll talk about has to, it should be about next season.
Right. He doesn't want to talk about last year at this point.
And maybe it's a better question for Riley Leonard if he's back on campus someday. They got him to jump off sides. I don't have an answer as if they didn't jump. Is there a plan to snap the ball? Do you take a timeout? Do you take delay of game? I've never gotten that far because they did get them to jump, which I believe is the primary objective. But with the offense out there, he's in the shotgun. If you don't get it, you're turning it over inside the red zone. My hunch is that there's no plan to snap the ball. You're just going to maybe take a timeout and kick. But I've never actually gotten an answer to that. And now I'm thinking about it. I want to know, was there a plan to snap the ball if they didn't jump? I don't know.
That's a good question, because go back a couple weeks before that when they played Indiana, and they did, kind of where they made Indiana ultimately use the timeout. Yes. With, similar but different. It was a special. Was it a field goal that they ran the team out on the field at that?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember we got to talk to Marty Biaggi after that, and he essentially said, worst case scenario, you hope that they use the timeout, and that's exactly what happened. And but they're very fond of the chaos that they create. And
and it was great because you're in a position too where Georgia, and I think they were misinterpreting, I think kind of by design from Notre Dame, what the rule was. They thought you couldn't do what they'd done, but they hadn't gotten over the ball, so they could substitute all 11. But it's such a great. I just, as Marcus Freeman keeps progressing through his career, it's just so fun to watch. I think we have an amazing front row seat for a guy that's just turning into one of the best head coaches in the country. But there's this added layer that Georgia's down 10. I can't remember how many timeouts they have left, but a timeout at that point in the game is so precious to them.
Mm-hmm.
They can't, they could call timeout. They probably would call timeout at a different point in the game. But because the clock is such a factor, I don't think they were willing to call the timeout, and that chaos creates them to jump offside. So in Kirby Smart's head, he's like, I either call timeout and we get settled before this, but we've lost something that we desperately need if we're going to ever come back in this game, or I trust them to not, take the bait. And unfortunately for them, they took the bait. But it was, you just think about it, it's like the perfect time for it. If you do it with that much time left in the third quarter, well, we don't know if their backs are against the wall yet. They might just use the timeout, and you kind of lose that element of surprise. So I go back and think about that. I'm just like, what a perfect time, perfect place on the field, because everyone's thinking the same thing. Like, there's no way they're going to do this. Oh my, and they're doing it, and it just it was unbelievable.
Exactly, and literally, the biggest game in the last 30 years, as it turned out. Yeah. So, you mentioned Marcus Freeman and how he's evolved as a head coach, and I'm curious because you do get to sit down with him, all the time during the season, and whether it's podcast and the whole thing. What stands out to you just about how he's evolved in this really short amount of time? He's only been a head coach for 3 years now.
Yeah, I think, and he's coached so much more than me and knows more about coaching. And I'm sure another coach could give a more accurate description of how he's evolved. But the biggest thing that sticks out to me that I really appreciate as someone that interviews him, listens to his press conferences, watches him coach, is he's extremely, I'm trying to think, I don't want to say the word vulnerable, but he's just very forthright and honest. And he comes to every media press conference or interview with an explanation for what happened, why it happened, and how they'll fix it. Think about all of, the moments in his career now where they maybe didn't meet the standard he set. Northern Illinois is the most obvious one. But Marshall, you think about the way his career started. It was a really tough start with the bowl game, and then having to go to Ohio State, and then the first home game at, losing that one at home. It was not going according to plan. Think about Ohio State 2 years ago at home. And those are some really tough pills to swallow. And in no instance is there finger pointing, is there excuse making. It's always about, this is where something that we did put us in a position to not meet our standard, and we have to fix it. And that's, to me, when that is earnest and genuine and it's repetitive. And I think that there was an element, you hear him early on, and you haven't seen all the wins yet. As a fan, you can go, come on, this is coach speak. This is not really like, I want to hear something, whatever it may be. Somebody could have an opinion of that that's, thinks that it's, just coach speak and doesn't really resonate. But I think if you listen to players, and I'm fortunate enough to be, able to talk to players and be in meetings and hear them kind of repeat those mantras, you can hear that it's clearly sinking in. And whether you watch a player press conference throughout media availability throughout the year, the same things are being said. I can't think of a time I've heard a player in the Marcus Freeman era, point out that something didn't go their way that should have gone their way, or that was the reason. And there's tons of opportunities, whether it's a missed call, whether it's a mistake somebody else made. And so I think that's contagious. And that's what stood out to me the most. The program is just so aligned. They're so on the same page. And even after coming up short in the title game, they're right back on the horse talking about how they get back there and do it again. It's not about what didn't go their way in that game, what someone could have or should have done that maybe held them back. No, it's about, hey, we as a group didn't do enough to win the national championship. What do we need to do to win it next time? And I just think that's the best. Whether or not it leads directly or indirectly to the kind of success everyone at Notre Dame wants to see is kind of just up for time to tell. But I think that it's just incredibly, it makes it so easy to root for them, right? Like, it's just full accountability,
right? Full
transparency. And then, now we're in year 4 and he's coming off maybe the best season, at least in modern Notre Dame history. Certainly one of them. So it's so fun to watch.
By the way, you talked about working with, Ryan Harris in the booth. I'm curious because, the guy is obviously very excitable. He has a good time in the booth. He is very into everything that's going on in the field, especially if it's going well. Like, do you have to wear a helmet and shoulder pads? Like, he seems like a very physical presence, to protect yourself from his enthusiasm sometimes.
Yeah, no helmet, no shoulder pads. We keep a safe distance in case he gets excited. No, I think that's Ryan is he brings a great energy that is contagious. I think that what can be lost sometimes because that's what everyone tells me, they love his energy. But like, if you really listen, he is breaking things down. He is really in the X's and O's. And I hope that when people listen, they make sure to take note of that, because he does a great job in a really tough role. I think football radio commentary is so tricky because you think about on TV, telestrator, replay, all these things. He has to tell you in 12 seconds, why the backside linebacker didn't fill X, Y, and Z, right? I could never first see it and then say it. So that's what I love when I listen back to our games is like, I learn a lot about football, but then a big play happens and he lets you know about it. And I think that there's something special. I didn't grow up with a college football team. I went to Pepperdine. We didn't have college football. I've now been lucky enough to be at Notre Dame. This will be upcoming. This will be the 10th year I've been in South Bend. So I've obviously kind of adopted them as my football team. So there's something about growing up with a football team that, ingrains you into the culture and you feel really passionate about it. I can't imagine what it's like to have played at Notre Dame and then to see Notre Dame go on this run, and everyone kind of knows like what they're trying to accomplish here. Trying to get that first title since 1988. And so I love that I have somebody in the booth with me that like, you can just tell, like we were in Atlanta, like it meant so much. And like, he was devastated when they lost as all the fans were, but when you're part of the team, there's just that extra sense of just what it took. He knew and he's won a Super Bowl, right? So he knows what it takes to win at the highest level. He knew like what this team had done to get to the final game. And you can tell it hurt that much more, him on behalf of the team. So I love that energy because I could never replicate it. And it's something you can only get from a former player who's been at Notre Dame, knows what it does for you both before, during, and after your time there. And I hear his excitement right now as I'm thinking about it, and it's contagious. It's great.
I'm curious, you might have a different perspective on the whole what's going on with USC because of where you're from, it sounds like, and the fact that your parents both went to USC, as you were saying earlier. So like maybe like what do they think about this whole thing?
Oh, well, let me be clear. My parents are now Notre Dame fans. They've
okay, so they totally switched. Okay.
Yeah. So they love Notre Dame and they've turned their back on the Trojans. I listen, I don't want to sound like, too much of a Marcus Freeman, acolyte, but I agree with what he said the other day. Like,
it's hard not to.
And if I just think about, again, growing up in Seattle with two Notre Dame fans, I remember the game that everyone here doesn't like in 2005. Like that was, again, I was in Seattle and my parents were USC fans, so they were going crazy at the time. But like, that's one of the most, iconic moments in college football history of the last few decades. The two teams meeting up is something that I think is great for college football. So I don't have a say in the matter. I think that, I'm comfortable saying I'd like to see them keep playing as forever. I think it's a great rivalry. And I think what Marcus Freeman said was spot on. And I kind of stand with him.
Wanted to get a couple basketball questions in before we wrap up. I know some fans are impatient, kind of waiting for more wins from the men's basketball team, but what have you seen from Micah Shrewsbury, just in terms of his imprint on the program in his first couple years going into year 3 now?
Yeah, first of all, and I kind of approach all these, questions the same way. It's like with Marcus Freeman. I just love getting to talk basketball with him. Like from my standpoint, that's the first thing I think of. When I get through the interviews and even some of the chats before and after, I learned a ton about hoops. And he was, of course, at Butler when they had those great runs there as an assistant. Right. And I remember those because I was in college then and kind of reminisce about certain plays, certain players. Of course, his NBA experience is super invaluable. He knows, anybody and everybody and kind of knows what it takes to translate to that level. My impression is like he is a brilliant basketball mind. And I think they are building towards something here. He would be the first to tell you that last year they came up short of their expectations. And I'm sure they have even higher expectations going into this year, as they should. I think year 3 is always a great year for new coaches to, he now understands the place, understands the team. You got to remember, it was still a fairly young team last year, right? I mean, the 2 years ago, they saw these freshmen. And I know, Marcus Burton, I think, if not the best player in the conference, certainly was worthy of being in the top 5 last year, even though he didn't get the vote that I thought he deserved in the conference.
I agree. Yeah.
I'm excited to see what year 3 looks like for him and Braden Shrewsbury. Listen, they brought a lot of guys back. And of course, the new freshman class is highly touted. So I'm excited to see what this year looks like. I think that, I know fans maybe were disappointed with last year's result, the same as the team was. But to me, it's like college basketball, it's kind of on the margins. It's like if you just flip 4 or 5 results, it's a completely different season and the way you're talking about it. And they could point to those games pretty easily. So I don't think they're that far off. I really, I look back to November. They played competitive against a lot of those highly touted teams in Vegas. Yeah. I think they showed what they can be. And I'll be excited to see what it looks like in these exhibitions they've announced in October. And then that month of November, you get to the end of the year and you look back to November, those games, the first 6 weeks are actually really important. Unfortunately, the way the ACC has been trending the last few years, they're not getting as many teams in. So I just think you got to come out of the gates firing and stack some really high quality non-conference data points for yourself. So I think they'll be ready. And I love the fact they're bringing back a lot of guys that have been familiar with the program. They should be really, I think, on kind of a next level from an execution standpoint, because a lot of teams, we see it, transfer portal, it's a new team every year. And I'm hoping they can leverage the fact that they have the unique dynamic with this team, that it's a lot of familiar faces. So you should be able to elevate your execution abilities that in a way that other teams might not be able to.
Yeah. This feels like, because he obviously had to cobble together a team that first year because of what the state of the roster. And like, this feels like year 3 with the veteran presence, a guy like Burton, a guy like Shrewsbury, and some of these other guys, and this influx of the young talent. This feels like this could be a pretty good year.
Yeah, I think that's where it's headed. Again, think about the injuries last year, right?
It has to play out. Yeah.
Yeah. If you just even think about last year and they're not going to make the excuse, so I will for them. And Marcus Burton, like, he twisted his knee for 24 hours there. I think we all thought maybe he's not going to play again this year.
Yeah.
Because it didn't look great. He didn't look happy. That's always what I look at the bench. And usually the guys know their body the best, right? And fortunately, he was back. And gosh, when he came back, it took like a week and you forgot he was ever injured. But they missed him for like a crucial – I think they missed – and then it was like 4 games in 8 days. And it just – from that point forward, they almost never felt like they could quite get the chemistry where it needed to be. And then they missed Matt Alacco at crucial times with a hand injury. Braden Shrewsbury, I think it's like the last month of the season. That's 3 of your 4 leading scorers right there that were out for significant amounts of time. And again, every team has injuries. You have to find a way to weather that. You have to have the depth to handle that. And the hope is that with the incoming class and some of the guys now in year 3 as well, that you've got that. But, if you can just assume pretty good health, which is a big assumption, I just think they're positioned to have a really solid season. And I, like you said, year 3, not just for the coaching staff, but for the players. Like, okay, you're a veteran now. You've been through this multiple times. You know what has maybe held you back in a few instances here over the course of the last 2 years. Can you address that in the summer, make the necessary improvements, and start winning a few of those games? It only takes a few, right? You just flip those 4 or 5 games and suddenly, it's a completely different outlook.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Tony Simeone, radio voice of Notre Dame football and men's basketball. And once the season gets back, you'll hear him on the Wake Up the Echoes podcast as well. Appreciate you doing this, Tony. A lot of great stuff.
Sean, thanks so much for having me. You guys do a great job at Irish Breakdown. I try to tune in throughout the year. Everyone in that whole staff does a great job providing insight. And on the women's hoops as well. Best of luck to you next year. Hope to see you on campus. And come on anytime. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. And look forward to more exciting calls from you during both football and men's basketball. Thanks, Tony. Tony Simeone. I had to figure out my back in there. Oh, did I catch Vince in the middle of of something?
Nope. Just getting situated, ready to go.
Sorry, I didn't mean to catch you off guard there. The screen was blank there for a second. So
yes, it was. It was the little rotation through all the different options we have for the screen.
I love it. The functions. Not that anybody cares about this, but the functions on this video thing, they've changed a little bit over time, and they have. They keep tweaking some of that stuff. So
it's the whole if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing, in my opinion.
I know,
but whatever.
All these technology, like, they always think that they have to be changing.
Correct.
How about just leave it the way that I've learned to do it, so that I don't have to relearn it again?
Seriously, we're old. You don't teach us new tricks, man. Just let's.
Exactly right.
Come on now.
That's exactly right. Thanks again to Tony Simeone for joining in. A lot of good stuff. I can't imagine. I asked him about this. I just can't imagine what Ryan Harris is like in the booth. Like, the way he sounds, as excited as he gets.
Well, it's funny because a lot of times I'll see him at halftime, at home games.
Right.
Totally calm, cool, collected, just chilling.
Get my drink.
Yeah, grab a little food, whatever. Does, like, totally chill. And then you listen to him on the radio, and he flips a switch, man. Like, I actually kind of respect it. You know what I mean? It's not an act. It's totally, that's who he is.
He's into it.
That's his emotion in the game, and he's an alum and all of those different things. And I know a lot of people really like to hear that. And when it's a home broadcast, bring it on, man. Like, I have no problem with that whatsoever. He does a great job. They both do a great job together. So I'm glad he was able to join us. That was really cool. And he's an Irish Breakdown fan. So, I mean,
can't be tell. He even gave you a compliment there. Like, you heard it. Like, all the guys at Irish Breakdown.
Oh, I'll take it.
There you go.
I'll take it.
Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
I am very much ready for rapid fire today, Sean Stiers. Got some good ones in here, and a little lean toward basketball with a couple of these. Okay, let's roll here.
Yep, got a little basketball in there with some basketball news this weekend. Got some football as well. And for everyone in the chat right now, if you got a question or two, just throw it in, or you can just save it for the mailbag show tomorrow. You can do that. You're tomorrow as well, right?
Yes, I am.
That's what I thought.
I am.
That's what I thought.
I'm like a Tuesday, Wednesday guy now for a while.
Yeah.
So, let's roll.
Fill in the blank. The Notre Dame football player who surprised you the most last season was blank.
I had to really kind of think about this one, and the reason is because I feel like we talk about Notre Dame football all year long, right? And it's hard for a guy to sneak up on us, of course, but it's hard for a guy to sneak up on you. You know what I mean? And so I kind of had to think about this one. This is what I decided. You tell me what you think.
Okay.
Emil Wagner.
Okay.
And the reason I'm saying Emil Wagner is he was the weakness, quote unquote, of the offensive line going into fall camp last year. And he was, can he put on enough weight? Can he be this? Can he be that? And he ended up being the most steady guy on the offensive line the entire season, mainly because he never got injured. But now he's starting to garner some preseason All-America looks. He's on a lot of watch lists. He's on all these different things because he does the one thing that you need to do. If you're a coach, if there's one thing you want your player to do, it's show up and play every day. Yep. And I'm not blaming a player for getting hurt or anything like that.
And go unnoticed if you're an offensive lineman.
I mean, he basically went unnoticed all year long. And so I got to give him a lot of credit, man. He is now a staple of this offensive line, this returning offensive line, who everybody thinks is going to be one of the better ones in college football. He's a big reason for it. So Emil Wagner's my guy.
I think that's a really good one. For all the reasons that you stated. First-time starter, we didn't really know what to expect from him, and then the thing comes up at the left tackle, obviously, and it's like, what are they going to get out of this line? And he turned out to be pretty much steady Eddie. Played the most snaps of anybody on the entire offense, and ended up being, like if you look at PFF grades, and I know that, there's maybe some grain of salt you can take with it, but a grade is a grade, and he graded out higher than any of the other offensive linemen. He's, I think when it all came through the wash, he was like the fifth highest graded overall player on the offensive side of the ball. So I think that is a really good one. And honestly, that's what I thought my answer was going to be, because I thought that you were going to go with Leonard Moore on the other side of the ball. And Joe said Leonard Moore. So I'll just make the case for Leonard Moore as well, because I think if you were doing offense and defense, these would probably be the two guys, right? Because coming into this season, what were we expecting from Leonard Moore?
Zero.
Nothing.
Zero.
We thought we were going to have Benjamin Morrison and Christian Gray out there.
Right. Yeah, he was the future. He wasn't the present.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And by the time it was all said and done, he turned into a freshman All-American, and Notre Dame's best, from where he started playing in the season, from that point on, he was their most consistent cornerback. So I'll just make the case and throw Leonard Moore's name into the hat.
I think that's a really good one. It's because there's always going to be somebody that's going to come out of nowhere. And I think, if you're, a recruiting beatnik and you really follow that stuff closely, and, Leonard Moore was a highly touted guy coming in, but he wasn't, I don't believe he was a 5-star. I don't believe he was considered the best player in the class or anything like that. And so he just kind of did his thing, and he was kind of that third guy. And like I said, he was the future, not the present. And
really good out of high school.
Yeah.
Really good out of high school, but not so elite that like Sly Fox is saying, he's like, I think depending on which service, it was like, like high 3, low 4,
like a composite 3
star.
Whatever.
And this was like the classic. Mike Mickens looked at this guy and saw things that played to what Mike Mickens is looking for in a cornerback, and it ended up playing out on the field. And I think that there's been a lot of those guys over the years that Mike Mickens has laid his eyes on and saw, and turned out to be pretty good. Go back to Sauce Gardner at Cincinnati.
No doubt. So, I mean, his track record is ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. I mean, he has been able to just pinpoint and find guys that fit what he wants and what he wants to operate with, and just I mean, turn them into NFL draft picks. I mean, that's anybody that's a corner. How can you not look at what he has done and think to yourself, why would I not go to Notre Dame?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, if you're a defensive back, why are you choosing anywhere else to go? If that's who, if you're looking at being, coached and developed and have a chance to win a national championship, why would you go anywhere else? I don't know the answer to that. So yeah, he is the present and the future now. And it's very exciting. There's no doubt about that. It's very exciting.
I think so as well.
Yep.
Fill in the blank. The biggest surprise player for the Irish this season will be blank.
I'm going to let you answer this one first, since I technically stole yours before. Okay. So I want to give you a first shot, though. You always give me first shot. I want to give you first shot.
I'm going to go with Anthony Knapp because I feel like Anthony Knapp is a guy, like some people are on Anthony Knapp, but he is, in terms of players on the current roster, like Steve Angeli is gone now. So I think that this now is the most polarizing guy on the roster. Like we've talked about this before. I think that if you graded Anthony Knapp on the curve for his freshman season, you would say, yes, he had a good season. But like he was the lowest graded pass blocker on the offensive line. And that is pretty important in a left tackle. But I like what you hope for now, and not even what you hope for, what you have to have now is, after being thrown into the fire as a true freshman at left tackle and playing all but the last game of the season, what you have to have now is Anthony Knapp step up and not just be graded on the curve, but be the guy, basically. Yeah. Be the guy, anchor that left side of the offensive line. Now, as we've talked about, when Schrouth came, when he moved over to the left and he was playing at left guard late in the season, Anthony Knapp's play improved. So maybe that helps him this year, because it sure seems like those are going to be the two guys on that side of the line. So I'll say Anthony Knapp surprises the remaining doubters and really steps up his play, elevates his play, because there's no more, well, he's a freshman now. Sure. You've got that full season plus of experience. You basically got a season and a quarter of experience for the run that they had last year. So I'll say Anthony Knapp is going to surprise the doubters that he has this year.
This is a tough one, man. I hate projecting and guessing and all.
You don't want someone pulling up the video 4 months from now and saying,
every time,
"Here you go, Vince. What happened there?" Yeah,
happens every time. You know what? I'm gonna take a flyer here. I'm gonna go Carson Hobbs. I'm gonna take the route.
Okay.
I'm gonna take the route of the third corner. Kind of a versatile kid who flashed in the spring, has an opportunity to, get some good minutes down. I know Devontae, I think, is probably going to end up being the nickel, it sounds like. But you never know, right? And you never know with injuries, and you never know with all of these different things. And so I think Carson Hobbs has an opportunity to do something this year in a reserve role. But you never know. He might have to step in and do something, and could be the next Leonard Moore. I don't know. So I'm going to go Carson Hobbs.
All right. I like that. Toonses says the video saying KVA wouldn't play last
Nobody
year.
said he wouldn't.
Did you
play.
say that?
I never
you saying that.
I never said it. I said he wouldn't
I think you
start.
Were, yeah, I said he. I know. I said he on.
Listen,
yeah.
I said he wouldn't start, and he didn't. So I feel pretty solid about that. First of all, I never said he wouldn't play at all. Come on now, I'm not an idiot. But yeah, I never said that. I'm unless you can produce a video where I said he's never going to play. I don't think I ever said that.
I'm really curious, like Mark is saying, will be interesting to see how well Mickens develops the corners playing more zone. I think that some people are like reading too much into they practiced more zone this spring.
Right.
I think that is basically going to be a change up. Like, as we've talked about, they got to the national championship game against a team that thrived on man-to-man defense. And Notre Dame found itself in a place where it needed to be able to play more zone, more consistently better. And they were just such a heavy man-to-man team that was not a place that they could go to. So it feels to me like I don't think they're all of a sudden going to be, a much more zone-heavy team. I just feel like you're going to see them practicing more zone so they have that gear to go to when they need to go there. Is that kind of how you feel about it? Or, think it's going to go?
I think that spring is to practice things that you haven't practiced and that you haven't done a lot, and they hadn't done a bunch of it. And so it looks heavy because it's spring. That's going to be dialed way back, I think, when we get to fall camp and they start, doing what they're going to be doing more in the season, in season. And we're not going to see any of it, so it doesn't really matter. But you're going to see a lot less zone, in my opinion. And that's okay. Like they're going to have that, like you said, as a change of pace, as something else that they can go to. And the percentage will start to balance out maybe a little bit more from man to zone and all of those different things. But it's not going to, like, they're going to abandon man. That's not going to happen.
Against the teams with the better receivers, which honestly right now there aren't that many on the schedule. I think that's, it's most likely going to, become playoff time. But against those kind of teams, i.e. Ohio State, you're going to need to play more zone. But, look, they found out, like, look at Penn State, look at Texas A&M as an example, look at Indiana, all those different teams. Notre Dame felt confident they could man up with anybody, and with good reason.
And they've shown it. Yeah. They've shown them to be able to man up with the best. So, I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Yep. As Vince teased, a little basketball in here. Micah Shrewsbury has the number 8 recruiting class in the nation entering school this year. They're on campus right now for summer school as they get started with their summer practices. He also just picked up a pair of commitments from a couple top 100 players for the 26 class we talked about on yesterday's show. So, Vince, scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that Shrewsbury's Irish will be in the NCAA tournament within the next 2 years?
I mean, he's doing all the right things on the recruiting trail and bringing guys in. I think he's doing a really good job with that. It's basketball, so it's different than football, obviously. But like you don't need as many impact players to make an impact, and especially the young players, and so I'm a little apprehensive pinning all the hopes and dreams of this basketball team on an incoming freshman class. I remember doing that with Mike Bray when he brought in that one class probably a decade ago now or more. You know which one I'm talking about. It was this huge class where it's like, oh, this is the class, and it just never really materialized. You know what I mean? And I feel like I don't want that obviously to be the case. I think Micah Shrewsbury is a good coach. I think he is a good person. I want him to be successful at Notre Dame. I just have a hard time pinning the hopes and dreams on a recruiting class. But you're giving me a 2-year window here, which I appreciate. And so I'm going to give it like a 7 because I think the odds are better than 50-50, which would be a 5. And so I'm going to ratchet it up to a 7 because we're just talking about making the tournament. They're still in the ACC. They're still in a league that may have been down, but they still get respect. And so if you can get yourself into the top half of the ACC, you got a chance to get into the tournament. So that is very beneficial as well. I think Notre Dame has the opportunity to do that. So I'm going to give them a 7 over a 2-year span.
Yeah, and that was the class that had like Nate Laszewski in it, Dane Goodwin, Robbie Carmody, those kind of guys. And the difference was, like Rex Pfluger and Prentice Hubb were probably like the 2 best veterans on the team. And the reason I think that it can be different this year is because you have Marcus Burton, who should enter the year as one of the favorites to win Conference Player of the Year going into his junior season. You also have Braden Shrewsbury, who, just like Burton, has been around the block now. It's kind of crazy that these guys are going into their junior seasons at this point because, they obviously came in the door with Shrewsbury. So I think that there's a better mix of veteran presence in addition to some studs in this freshman class. And you're not going to have to really lean on these freshmen in the same way that you had to lean on that group. And now I think that honestly, this group of freshmen is going to be better than that group of, they were all like those guys, the ones that you're talking about, Leshewski and Carmen, like that, like obviously you had some injuries in there that impacted some of those guys. But I feel like one of the things that always bugged me about that class for what they were supposed to be, they really lacked athleticism. They really lacked explosiveness and that kind of stuff. And like when you look at these guys who are coming in, there's going to be a lot more of that. So I'm pretty confident that, again, I'm giving it a 2-year window.
Yeah.
So I'm going 8.
Okay, you're a little higher than me. All right.
They will be in the tournament within the next 2 years.
Just trying to temper my expectations a little bit.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Not wanting to build it up too high.
And I caught the tail end of what Simeone was saying, and that injury to Marcus Burton just really set this club back this past year. Like I thought they would be a bubble team this year. I thought they had the opportunity to be a bubble team, and him getting hurt and missing those 4 games was it was a backbreaker. And they just never really recovered from that. And that's what happens when you build your entire roster on one guy. You know what I mean? And so that's why he's going to need some help. And so can this freshman class be that help? That's the biggest question mark. And I feel more confident about it in year 2. If Marcus Burton comes back for his senior year, which I think is debatable, but I feel better about it in year 2 than I do in year 1, because that freshman class will then be sophomores and probably have a bunch of minutes under their belt. So if you would have given it to me this year, I'd say it's a 50-50 shot. You know what I mean? But in 2 years, I give it better than 50-50.
Okay. I think that's fair.
I hope they can do it this year. There's nothing more fun than going to the Joyce and cheering on a good team. A team that is a better than average chance to win every game. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's why it's fun to go to the women's games. But men's games have been a little not that way.
Right.
So.
I mean, like this Jalen Harrelson is supposed to be a dude, like part of this class that's coming in right now. The Lalu guy. And, we talked like these 2 guys who committed over the weekend and yesterday are both Lalu guys as well. La Lumiere. Is that how you say it?
No, Lalamere.
Lalamere. I knew that. I think I said it right yesterday. But for some reason it wasn't registering.
You got messed up in your head, man.
It tripped off. Yeah, it tripped off the tongue wrong. And Swandong says, what is he actually doing with these classes though? Talking about Shrewsbury. Well, I mean, like, again, as I was talking about, I don't know if you were here, Swandong, when at the end of the interview that we just had a little bit ago with Tony Simeone, who's the radio voice of Notre Dame men's basketball. Like, he had to cobble together a team his first year coming in. So it's not like he had a highly touted recruiting class that year. He had Marcus Burton, but it's like,
but he wasn't a highly touted.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The expectation on Marcus Burton, like he has outperformed what was expected of him coming in the door. He's been great.
Big time.
Yeah.
He was great in the NIC, the Northern Indiana Conference, which is the high school conference in this area. He was great. He dominated, right?
Yeah.
This is not high-level basketball, though, either. You know what I mean? And I can almost look him in the eye. You know what I mean? So, like, he does not real tall. He's just gritty, man. He's just gritty. He's a great player. We've all seen it, right, over the last couple of years. Nobody thought that was – like, we figured he would have to go to college, kind of, get a little bigger, like in the weight room and, do all the things that you need to do to become a collegiate basketball player in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Mm-hmm. And he just surprised everybody and probably including himself if he was in an honest moment. You know what I mean? But the kid plays a lot of confidence, and he's fun to watch. But, yeah, he was a revelation his freshman year.
And Swandong, it's okay that you weren't here. I was just like, we touched on it. That's why I was saying, I didn't know if you kind of heard us talk about it. But my point is, like, Shrewsbury, what he inherited with the roster, there was not much there. And he has had to, he had to throw it together from day one. And then you have the transfer portal. And, they haven't really been able to get those big impact type transfers out of the transfer portal. They've done okay, but they've been, it feels like more role guys than anything. And when you don't have, like he's got the number 8 recruiting class in the country now. This is the first highly touted recruiting class that he has had. And it's also, by the way, the highest rated ever recruiting class that the Notre Dame men's basketball program has had. So, let's be honest, there's a lot of expectation on these incoming guys, but they're also already off to a good start next year with another good point guard. And, like a top 50 point guard in the country, top 50 player who happens to be a point guard, and a 7-footer that they got a commitment from. So
yeah.
I think they're like these last 2 classes, it's rolling. So really, would you have liked to have seen a little bit more improvement last year from year 1 to year 2? Sure. But Marcus Burton was also out for a good chunk of the season, and there was some impact there as well. So really, to me, it not it starts right here, but it's really, I think the evaluation gets a little bit more intense from what happens from this point on for me. And so from that aspect, Vince, when you look at this year, do they need to be in the NCAA tournament?
Oh man, they got to be in the conversation. I'm not saying they have to be in the tournament, but they have to be in the conversation in February. You know what I mean? And I'm talking like late February. They need to be in the conversation. It needs to be, hey, if they do this and this, and nothing, out of the ordinary, nothing extraordinary. Like if they can do this and this, they're going to be in. If they do this and this, they're going to be on the bubble. Like they need to be in that conversation. It can't be, well, if you get an NIT invitation, do you go? Like it can't be that conversation. I don't think. I think it needs to be, hey, this team has a great chance, of getting into the NCAA tournament if they win a game or two, in the ACC tournament, or they're kind of a lock going in, kind of a deal. But I think they need to be in the conversation. We need to be talking about this team making the tournament in February, which hasn't been the case for a long time.
I agree. They need to be, they at the very least, because when the projections start coming out, and the bubble watch and all that different kind of stuff, they need to be as we're getting there in February, like when Joe Lunardi goes on ESPN and he's publishing his stuff every week and he's going on the shows and and they're talking about it. They need to be right square in the middle of the conversation, even if it's like first 4 in or first 4 in, last 4 out, that kind of stuff. They need to be in that conversation with an opportunity to, at the very least, play themselves into the tournament, kind of like what you were saying. Pick up a couple wins at the ACC tournament, that kind of thing.
Just to seal it, or, let's put up that blind resume against another blind. Like, I want them in the conversation. You know what I mean? How many RPI, whatever, certain people love talking about the different tiers of wins and all of those different things. But, I want to see Notre Dame's blind resume against other people's blind resume and people picking Notre Dame. Like that's where this team, I think, needs to be this season. And then the next season, you make a run at it, by make a run at it. I mean, you are a viable member of the ACC. You know what I mean? Where the Joy Center is a tough place to come and play, and you go get some victories on the road. You steal a couple on the road, those kind of things. Like, that's where this program needs to get to. I'm not saying Notre Dame needs to be a national championship contender every year. It's not the football program. And I think that's a higher hill to climb in basketball than it is in football. We can have that conversation some other time, but they need to be a team that it's tough to play here. Man, I hate going to South Bend. It's tough to play there, and it's a scrappy team on the road.
That's the kind of stuff that really needs to start this year, because there's been so much inconsistency. And obviously we've had the rants from Shrewsbury. He's talked about it. It bugs him, and it would bug any coach, to get the lapses in intensity and effort and all that different kind of stuff. That's really the thing that we need to see more consistently now going forward from Shrewsbury's team is is that just the consistent effort, the consistent energy, like regardless of what the talent level is. Like you said, you go into Purcell Pavilion, you know that you're going to be in for a dogfight anytime you play a Micah Shrewsbury Notre Dame men's basketball team. That's like the basic thing that I think we need to see this year.
Right. Yep. Agreed.
All right, let's go to Florida State. We're going to guess an over/under season win total for the Seminoles.
Oh boy, this could go anywhere.
I know. I thought that this would be an interesting team to do based on what happened with them last year. Jesse came up with an interesting way to kind of score it as we go through the schedule yesterday. We can either go, that's a win, or that's a maybe, or we can just say that's a definite loss.
Okay.
As well. I think the win and the maybe are the easiest way to do it, with the exception of probably they opened the season against Alabama.
So is the maybe like a half a game? Like, or,
well, then you just go back at the end and go, okay, how many wins did we get?
Oh, I see. Okay.
We don't have to do it that way.
Oh, hey, whatever.
It made
Let's
sense. It made sense. And then we outthought ourselves when it came time to picking.
What'd you do yesterday?
We did. Oh, man, who did we do yesterday? Texas.
Oh,
we did Texas. And
they got to be about 10.5.
We both guessed 10.5. They turned out 9.5.
Really?
Is the line. Yep.
Huh. Okay.
But it's 9.5, but the odds were like minus 176. So like they're just suckering everybody with those odds on the over. So okay. So Florida State opens against Alabama.
Yeah, that's a loss.
That's a loss.
I feel very confident in that.
East Texas A&M, which I did not even know existed. If they can't beat them, it's going to be a long season.
Yeah, they don't even have a logo on the site that I'm looking at, so that's a win.
Kent State.
Should be a win.
Should be a win.
The Golden Flashes.
At Virginia.
I feel like that should be a win.
I think so too.
Should be. And again, this isn't last year's Florida State, hopefully, but I feel like that should be a win.
Yeah. Miami. I
Lost.
put that a maybe.
Oh, okay.
Well, let's just call them maybes, okay?
Oh, instead of losses? Okay.
Yeah, let's just do that. So we're not necessarily saying.
I'm not going to disparage how bad Florida State could be. Okay,
right.
Got it.
Pittsburgh? Maybe.
People are out there on Pittsburgh, so I don't know.
The hesitation in your voice says we should at least call it a maybe.
All right, fair enough.
I think. Stanford?
Win.
I'll give them a W. Wake Forest?
Should be a W.
Clemson's a loss, but for this we'll put it in the maybe just to say, Virginia Tech. I think it's a maybe.
Yeah, I think it's a maybe as well.
NC State.
That's a maybe.
It's a maybe. Florida.
Man, that's also a maybe.
Yeah. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wins without the maybes. So that's Andre may have it. 4.5.
I'll be optimistic for Seminole Nation, and I'll say 5.5.
That's kind of the way I'm leaning.
5.5. If you got a chance to be bowl eligible, and frankly, I know that's not what Florida State fans would want to hear, but if you're bowl eligible after the season that you had last year, that's a step in the right direction.
I think so. I'm going to go 5.5 as well.
Okay.
Toonsis says 6.5. Andre says 4.5. Vince and I are going 5.5. And the Florida State over/under win total is, oh my gosh, 7.5.
Oh, pound the under, folks.
And listen to the odds that they're giving. The over has plus 186 odds. So they're not even, there's no way that team is winning 8 games.
No chance.
There's no way. The under is minus 235.
If anybody's taking that.
Why is this even a line?
Yeah, that shouldn't even be a line because
this
it's so
line
lopsided.
should be 6.5 with
at least. That's awful.
Wow. Go figure.
Well, they're trying to get play, obviously.
I guess if they end up winning 8 games when it's all said and done, we can all eat our words. But I just don't see 8 wins for them.
I don't know where they're going to get 8 on that schedule.
There's no way they're only losing 4 games. They play Alabama and Clemson and Florida to begin with. That's 3 right there. Miami, probably 4, which best case scenario puts you at 8. And there's no way they're winning every toss-up game with Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech, and NC State. Or even, there's just, I don't see it. I don't see it.
Wild.
Shocking.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way.
Yeah. All right, interesting college football TV news this week. ESPN is reportedly finalizing a deal to sublicense one college football playoff semifinal game per year to TNT, in addition to the first-round TNT games that they already had. TNT would broadcast one CFP semifinal per year in 2026, 2027, 2028. You in or out on TNT getting playoff semifinal games, Vince?
I mean, ESPN or ABC has all the rest of the games, right? So, a little change of pace, I guess, may not hurt in this particular setting. I just think TNT is such a weird conglomeration to go to. Like, how are they next in line? I realize it's bidding and money and all of those different things, but you would think it would be an NBC or a CBS or
a Fox.
Fox. Yeah, exactly. Like, where's TNT coming from? Like, here's what I don't like. So I realize that most of the games are on ESPN, and if that's the case, if you don't have cable, you're out of luck. Personally, I would rather have it go to an air channel so that more people could watch.
Yeah.
But so I guess I'm out on TNT getting a CFP semifinal, but I would also be out on ESPN having all of them as well. Like, they should be on ABC. You know what I mean? And some of them are simulcast. I get that, but I don't know. I just don't like it being on cable. That's me.
I agree. Joe says depends on the announcers in the presentation, and that will be a question who exactly they'll get. Josh says TNT is CBS. Well, they're all owned by Warner Brothers Discovery, but there's
but then put it on CBS.
It's not going to CBS.
Right.
It's going, to your point, it's going to TNT. Yeah. So they're owned by the same parent company, but the difference is CBS is not going to be part of this. It's specifically going to TNT, just like last year on cable. And that's I think that you're kind of, cutting off your nose to spite your face a little bit by doing it that way. Like you said, rather than it is odd that TNT is trying to be such a player in this whole thing rather than like a Fox specifically, unless ESPN just doesn't want to deal with Fox and they would rather see it just go to TNT. But I haven't seen any monetary, in terms of what TNT is going to pay them to do it. They're going to have to pay a pretty good chunk of money, I would think, to give up a semifinal game, though.
I think if they're going to do this to really guarantee they get some eyes on the product, you need to get Charles Barkley and his crew to be the studio analysts for the game.
Well, and I think this is part of the deal as well, because TNT is losing the NBA next year. They are trying to go they're going to have more college football during the regular season next year. So that'll be.
I get that. Yeah. So
they're trying to go down that road a little bit more.
What kind of crew are they going to have? What kind of in studio analysis are they going to have?
Right.
That's
a good point. Just put Charles Barkley and Shaq and Smith and just let him analyze anything.
And just let him say stupid stuff. I will tune in for that. That's where I want to be. When you go down the rabbit hole of scrolling reels or whatever, the little videos online, I don't know how many I've seen recently are top 5 dumb things Shaq has said, or something along those lines.
Even my wife is watching Shaq videos these days, and she's sending them to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I guess I pine for the old days of things being on the network stations. You know what I mean?
I don't disagree with that.
That's me being old. What can I say?
Okay. It's okay. I think a lot of people are in that same boat. There's a report that ESPN could boot Doris Burke from its #1 NBA booth next year. That includes Mike Breen as the play-by-play guy and Richard Jefferson as the other analyst along with Burke. it's not certain that she'll be replaced or if they'll go with just 2 people in the booth, although it seems like they're leaning toward 3, which is like more and more. That's the way it seems to be going. Do you buy or sell the 3-person broadcast TV booth, Vince?
It's a huge sell for me. That's too many voices. That's too many people in one booth. And I realize when you have 2 men and a woman, it's easy to tell who is who and all of those different. I get that. It's just too many. It's too many opinions. It's too many voices. Like that's what the studio is for. That's what the halftime analysis is for. You don't need that many voices on the play-by-play of a game, play-by-play in color. There's 1 and 1, and that's it. And there's nothing better than when you have a great relationship between the play-by-play and the color guy, and they just go back and forth, and you have a great call of a game. I mean, obviously you can do a 3-man booth. Obviously, it's saying 3-man, 3-person booth, whatever. You can do it. It has to just be done very carefully and very nuanced. And all 3 of those people have to you can feel when it's your turn to talk. When there's 3 people, that's a lot harder.
And that's the problem with this booth is they don't seem to it's the first year they've been together for one thing. So there's that, but there's just, you're at this point in the season, you're at the end of the season in the NBA finals. And the chemistry just doesn't seem like it there. Like they don't know when to talk, that's an issue.
That's a problem.
But to me, if I'm doing a hierarchy or a ranking of sports where a 3-person booth makes sense and where it doesn't, basketball and hockey are at the bottom of the list in terms of the major sports because of the fact that it is so fast paced. I just don't think you need a 3rd person. I think that what these networks do a lot of times is it's a bit of a crutch where you have some inexperience. So you figure, well, they don't have that much experience, so we'll just make it a 3-person booth and they'll figure it out. They can talk a little here, they can talk a little here. And again, especially in basketball, it doesn't make sense because there's so much action. And it's you see it during the NCAA tournament where they throw together these 3-person booths. And it doesn't make sense, especially in basketball to me. Yeah. Top of the list is baseball because the pace is so different and you can actually
have a
carry on a conversation and you've got the video there in front of you, so you're not worried about, who's saying what.
Yeah. I still feel like 3 is too many, even for baseball, but it's more manageable in baseball because it's not like basketball. It's not like hockey. It's not, it's not like football, for example. The pace is just different. And there is way more window for conversation and things like that. So you can do 3 for baseball. I still don't like it. I still like 2. 2 is more than enough. I mean, you used to do baseball solo. You know what I mean? Which, by the way, very difficult to do, obviously. But 2 is a luxury for you. 2 is a luxury for you. You know what I mean? You're talking about a 3rd person in the booth?
That's right. That's right.
2's company, 3's a crowd, man.
Yeah.
That's too much.
I agree. In general, I agree. Which, again, with the football, I think is the next after it falls in between, and it still has to be the right people though, because in general, I don't want it, but arguably the greatest booth in the history of any sport is the 1970s. I think it went into the early 80s, so you probably don't remember it. The Monday Night Football booth with Howard Cosell, Frank Gifford, and Dandy Don Meredith. There was, you had the Hick Meredith, with his jokes and his, corn pone stuff, and Howard Cosell, who was so full of himself, and Gifford trying to play it down the middle. But it was great. It was great entertainment. It's arguably the best booth ever. But it's you just Monday Night Football has never been able to replicate.
They've tried.
That. And again, it comes down to the chemistry,
right?
If you and Jesse and I did a 3-person booth, if we were asked to go do 3 people in a booth, I think we'd be just fine.
Yeah. Agreed.
But it's also radio and, that we would most likely be doing. And as TD4ND says, I can't disagree with you. Radio has the best announcers. TD.
Not wrong.
Not going to hear me disagree there.
Not wrong.
Dennis Miller.
Oh,
oof.
That was awful.
The Dennis Miller, Tony Kornheiser days.
Oh,
man.
That was hard to listen to.
They tried some things.
And I was a kid, I believe, when Dennis Miller, when they tried to put him in, I think I was a teenager. I can't remember the years it was. I just, even then, I remember thinking, this is awful. Like he kept trying, he was trying so hard. He would have all these like pre-written jokes and all these different things. It was like, dude, just stop. Just stop, man.
Yeah. Ugh. Too much. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us today.
There you go.
Zipped right through it. Thanks again to Tony Simeone for jumping on earlier today. Good stuff from him. Speaking of radio voices, the radio voice of Notre Dame football and men's basketball. We will have our mailbag show tomorrow. As always, we're already heading towards Wednesday, so that's very exciting. Everyone's got to be happy about that. So
yeah,
let me make sure that I'm not missing anything here. I don't think that I am. Nope. So there you go. That is right, TD. Hit that thumbs up before you leave. We do appreciate it. And we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.